Okay. Let's concentrate on the activities that we have. So if you look at the integration orchestration, so these are the activities that are specific to our orchestration. We have two types of orchestrations, right? Which is integration types. We have app-driven orchestration and we have scheduled orchestration. So inside these two orchestrations, these are the activities that you will find. So it's good for you guys to know these activities before we pitch in and create a integration flow. Now, the very first activity is our assign activity. So if you want to create any variables for your integration, if you want to hold some values in a variable, and if you want to use it in other flow steps, then yeah, you can go ahead and use this activity. And we have this EDI Translate activity, which we discussed yesterday, right? We have find B2B schemas under our B2B integrations. So this EDI Translate activity will be used to handle our B2B schemas for the B2B integration. Now map is very important, but this is used to map the elements from one source to a target. But you can even have multiple sources. You can have multiple sources and then have just one target and map them. That's not a problem. But target will always be just one target. Sources could be multiple, but target is just one target. But map activity, it automatically gets created whenever you add a connection to your integration flow. Yesterday, you guys would have noticed when we added read connection, a map activity got created automatically, right?
Right.
That gets created automatically. But apart from it, if you want to add a map activity to any of your flow, you can go ahead and use this activity. Right. Now, moving ahead to the next set of activities, integration activity is if you want to call an integration which is already developed inside the OIC, if you want to call it, go ahead and call this. So what we usually do is for very big integrations like customer suppliers or AP invoices or AR invoices or receipts, we try to break the flows. For example, we write one integration for just reading and loading file data to database, and then we write a separate integration to process database data, and then we write a separate integration to load it to Fusion FBDI page, because we handle the exception handling in between, right? If anything happens in between, anything if the data is not loaded into Fusion successfully, then we also provide a exception handling BBCS page where it says where the user can come and correct the error records. So since this is implemented, what we usually do is we break these integrations and then we try to create one parent integration where we call all these sub integrations. So this is just a a design pattern that we do to maintain the integrations well, or to because the activity stream would be really big. You cannot go through the integrations activity stream if it is really big, right? So that's why better if you break it up and maintain the integration separately. But if you don't have very complex exception handling or any process flows that you're implementing for the integration, you need not break it. You can go ahead and have just one integration itself. That's not a problem. But this activity can be integration activity can be used to call any other integrations inside that's developed only in OIC. You cannot call anything else. It should call only the OIC integrations. And we have this JavaScript function. As we discussed yesterday, we have libraries component where we can specify JavaScript function and also the Java functions, right? The normal Java functions. So yesterday we noticed that in map activity itself, we have our user-defined function that displays our library function. Apart from it, if you want to use these functions outside your mapping element, right, then you can go ahead and use the JavaScript activity, where you can plug this in between your integration flow activities. Like, for example, if you want to plug this function after you read a file. If you want to convert it to a different format itself, then yeah, you can go ahead and plug in this JavaScript function. So don't get confused. Library is a place where you define the function. This activity is a place where you call it. That's it. Simple.
Okay.
Now, process activity is if you have defined any process flows inside your OIC, and if you want to call that process flow inside your integration. For example, when your integration is running and it gets stuck, if you want the developer to log into process flow and input some value, so all these kinds of operation specific design you can do. Have for each activity, which we would be using more often in our integration flows. For example, for each file, if FTP file, we cannot restrict our third-party applications to give us only one file at a time. There might be many files, especially when the file sizes are more than 1 gigabytes. We might ask them to break it and give it to us, right? So in those cases, we'll have multiple files in our source FTP folder. We will use this for each activity to loop through those files, to process those files one by one. And then we will have, but the only point we need to note is you cannot, once you define the for each, some of the activities inside for each cannot be moved outside. So when you input for each, you have to make sure that you are defining, you are very sure with your process flow and then designing the whole integration flow. And for each can be used for any other elements as well. If you are trying to loop through a set of elements, you can use for each, but most probably we would be using for files, to list the files and loop through the files one by one. And then we have scope. Inside your integration itself, as I was telling you guys, we used to divide the integrations into separate integration flows, and then we create a parent integration and call these the sub integrations, right? You can follow that way, or else you can use the scope activity, which can be used to group your set of functions. For example, in our inbound flow itself, if you see, reading and loading could be one part, transformation could be one part, and loading the transform data to fusion could be one part. So these three would can be clubbed in a single scope for us to maintain the errors, right? So scope has its own fault handling. So if something happens inside the scope, you can define the custom fault handling for the particular scope. And you can even create scope variables that stays inside the scope. Inside the scope itself. So if you want to club a few activities, then you can go ahead and use scope. And it is a good practice to use scope inside our integration flow so that our error handling becomes much crisper. Now we have switch. Switch is used to write a particular, for example, let's say we have this FTP server and we first read all the files from FTP server. If there are no files at all, you don't want it to end up in error with a unknown error, right? You might want to throw a proper error saying there are no files. You might want to send an email to the source applications admin team saying there are no files in the FTP server. Guys, take a look and get back to us. So all these kind of conditional switch, if you want to do in your integration flow, that's when switch comes into picture. As I said, we usually do it when we don't have, we first list all the files from FTP server and we check a condition, okay, whether we have files to process or not. If we have files, then the switch will be used to take the normal flow, which loads data and transform data and everything. And if we don't have file, switch will have one more route, which will raise a email notification or raise an error, and it stops the integration right there itself. So that's where we use switch. And now these are the very first two activities that are listed are very developer friendly. First one is logger. When you want to you want your steps to be logged in your activity stream. Activity stream is nothing but your flow tracking messages that comes as part of OIC itself. You will not define anything. OIC itself will take care of sending you messages like the file is picked up from this FTP server. It is in this structure, and this is the data that's been mapped, and this is the data that's been written to a FTP file. So all these things, all these steps will be captured in activity stream inside OIC itself. I'll show you guys all these pages where you can find activity stream where you can troubleshoot. But yeah, since OIC has its own activity stream, which takes care of giving us messages on your connections during your integrations run. If you want to add more logging to it, for example, you will have your custom logging, right? Like this flow, in this flow, it enters reading the file. In this flow, it enters reading another file. In this flow, it enters going into database table. So if you want to have custom logging in your activity stream, then you can go ahead and use this logger. Note is when you want to add notes to your, it's like you're adding comment in your PL SQL packages, right? For example, when you write a package, you write an initial comment with author, the version control, the change history, everything, right? For better maintenance. So likewise, if you want to, you can also have notes inside your integration flow, which can talk about what the integration is about. If you want to have some notes to the a developer who is going to pick up this integration next, or if you want to make your integration more developer friendly, you can go ahead and add notes. A notification is just to send emails. It looks exactly like your email box where it asks for from, to, subject, and also the email body. We just have to structure what should be the from to email addresses and what should be the body. We just have to structure it using some parameters or using some static keywords. We just have to structure it. Now we have wait activity, which is used to make the integration flow wait for some time. For example, let's say if when we import employees, right? First we have to import all the employees first, and then only we will import their managers, right? Because the managers also must be created as employees first, and then only we have to create managers. So what we can for employee import integration, what we can do is once the employee HDL process gets submitted, we can wait for the HDL process to get completed because the call from OIC would be to just submit the process, be it your ESS job, be it your PDA process ESS jobs. It will simply submit it. It won't wait for it's asynchronous process. It won't wait for it to get completed. So what we have to do is we have to make use of the utilities or the activities that we have in OIC and wait for some time before we go ahead and create the next upcoming entity. For example, employee supervisor. So what we do is we will check. We also have a while activity inside our integration. We will keep on waiting till the job status becomes succeeded. So one of the examples we saw is we have this get ESS job status operation, right? We can use that operation and we can keep on checking whether the status is completed or not. It would either get completed as with the state succeeded message or warning message or error message, right? So till it comes with these three statuses, we will keep on waiting, and once we get any one proper status, we will take that. We will use that status and switch our flow accordingly. For example, if it is succeeded, then we will go ahead and use the employee supervisor import. If it ended in error, then we might not want to proceed with the integration, right? We will just send an error notification and we will just end it. Okay, and these are the end activities that we have. Like you can define how an integration should end. If you are designing except fault handler or global handler, you can when you're designing the handler inside, I mean error handler inside your integration, you can use these rethrow fault and throw new fault activities. If you want to just stop the integration, you can go ahead and use the stop button.